My name is Ashley Lynn, and I'm married to my high school sweetheart, Landon, who's an elementary PE teacher. We have two biological girls, Addison, who's 10 going on 35, our vegetarian social activist, and Millie, who will be 8 next month and is our happy-go-lucky, soccer-loving, take-charge girl. We lived happily as a family of 4 with our big Golden Doodle cruise, but something kept pulling us into looking into adoption to complete our family. In March of 2014, Zachariah was born. He was taken straight from the hospital and put into foster care, as it was clear that his birth parents were not ready to take care of him. His placement was supposed to be temporary, a few months of care while his parents worked to bring him back home. He ended up living with the same foster mother for 2 years, going to hours of parental visitation every week before the state decided he could never return home. By this point, Zach had already fallen way behind in his development. He had severe anxiety at visitation and had missed out on the stability and consistency of a family. But we didn't know Zach when we started to think about adoption. The girls were 5 and 8 when I began doing some research online about different options. I had an infant in my mind because besides adopting internationally, which seemed complicated and expensive, I really wasn't familiar with any other options. When foster care adoption popped up in my searches, I was immediately intrigued. Landon and I signed up to attend a class at Boys and Girls Aid to see what it was all about. By the time we left that night, after listening to the statistics and watching the videos, we knew there was no going back. We dove into it head first. There was so much to get done. Sometimes we look back and think, why did we do it? There was just a pull there. I don't think there was ever really a choice. Those months flew by with classes, paperwork, home visits, and on and on. Landon and I joked that we blacked out for the next 10 months. And when we came to, we had a 2-year-old boy. If anyone here has experienced a 2-year-old boy, you know what a shock that was to our life. Here we had our first experience with a boy who was fully 2. Add to that his developmental delay, and then top that off with trauma from foster care. Not to mention that at this point, he was still not legally free and was going to 4+ hours of birth parent visitation a week. To say our life was turned upside down is an understatement. We call Zach our joy boy. He has big blue eyes, dark curly hair, and the most magical laugh. When we first saw Zach's profile, it seemed written for us. They wanted older siblings for him, maybe a dog, and it'd be great if one of the parents happened to be a teacher. There was just something different about him. It was like we just knew he was the one. It was this constant struggle of staying positive and hopeful while trying to guard our hearts and the girls' hearts in case we weren't chosen, which we apparently were not doing a great job of since we found Zach's picture as the background on Addison's iPod immediately after submitting on his profile. We quickly realized profiles are written to highlight the best. They are written to make prospective parents think, yeah, I can do this. We also realized quickly that the first time you speak to the child's caseworker, they're going to give you the worst case scenario. My first conversation with Zach's caseworker went something like this. Zach is significantly delayed. He may never live on his own. He probably won't be potty trained until he's at least 5. I know your family likes sports, but just know that if Zach plays a sport, he will probably never be as fast as the other kids. I just need you to know that he may never be normal. But again, this unexplained pull kept telling us, he's your son. It quickly became apparent that his reasoning behind these viewpoints was based largely on what he knew about Zach's biological parents. It was based off of statistics, conjecture, and years of seeing worst-case scenarios that understandably leave you a bit jaded. The system is not set up to allow for caseworkers to have the time or the energy to get to fully know and understand an individual child. For many kids in foster care, their caseworker is their one consistent adult, but it is also the adult who is pulling them away from their family or a foster placement. These kids are in desperate need of an adult who is able to take the time to understand them and who's willing to advocate and fight for them. It was after that phone call that Landon and I decided that Zach would start with a clean slate in our home. We would honor and respect his past, but we would put no limitations on who he could be or what he could accomplish. I got off that first phone call and I thought to myself, just watch. When Zach first came to our home, he had just turned 2. He did not say many words. He knew a few signs and said a handful of individual words not put together. Within weeks of living with 2 older sisters, Zach's vocabulary did a complete 180. He began putting 3 to 4 word sentences together and stopped using any signs because he knew the words. I remember the first sentence I heard him say. He was on the stairs and he looked at me and he said, while patting his leg like calling a puppy, "Mom, come stairs, now." And I thought, yeah, this dude's gonna be okay. We quickly realized that routine was very important with Zach. We did the same bedtime routine every night that we called the 3 Bs, which were bath, books, and bed. We read him the same book every night, Good Night Moon, and sang him the same song. We rocked him to sleep and gave him a bottle like an infant for over a year after he was placed with us. Separation anxiety has been an ongoing struggle for Zach. When he first came to live with us, he became attached to us pretty quickly, but he would always have one parent he was more attached to at one time. It would vary month to month, it seemed. Whenever that parent would have to leave, even if it was just to the other room, he would hyperventilate and scream, "Come back, come back." I remember one time I had to leave to go to a meeting. He screamed and cried so intensely that he made himself vomit. He would shake and grind his teeth until we could hold him tightly and calm him down. This intensified when we would take him to his birth parent visitation, which we had to do twice a week for the first 7 months he was in our home. After parental rights were finally revoked, his anxiety began to lessen as his trust in us began to build. We talk with him a lot about how we always come back to each other. One of his favorite shows is Daniel Tiger's Neighborhood. There's a song called Grown Ups Come Back. We sing it every time one of us leaves. Having those words to say has helped him so much. He even says them to us after he gets back from being somewhere. "See, Zach always comes back." Within 6 months of being in our home, Zach had caught up in all areas of his ASQ testing. ASQ stands for Ages and Stages Questionnaire and is considered the most accurate way to screen young children for developmental delays. His progress was most noticeable in his speech, but extended to all areas of his development. When he first came to our home, he was not able to stack blocks. He lacked the motor skills and attention span. But with hours of one-on-one time and the belief he could do it, he was stacking blocks 10 high within his first week at our home. Once he had the ability to communicate, we quickly realized that Zach's memory was pretty amazing. He remembers everyone he's ever met and can usually tell you their names and many times the city they live in. He recognizes places he's been even years before and can many times tell us how to get to those places when we're driving. Through physical therapy and many hours of working on skills at home, Zach has improved his motor skills and is able to run, jump, and pedal a bike. He has also come so far in his social development. Zach did not have any other children in his foster home, and his sisters were the first kids that he interacted with on a regular basis. He had to learn to share both his toys and his attention quickly. He soaked up having 2 older sisters, and the 3 of them developed an instant bond that still makes my heart burst. I believe strongly that having older siblings was a huge factor in his fast growth. Because of his incredible progress, Zach graduated out of his early intervention program that he was placed in and was no longer eligible for their services. Zach's brain needed stability. It needed consistency. It needed unconditional, predictable love. He needed to learn to trust, and he needed to learn to believe in us so that he could believe in himself. Today, Zach is a confident, fun-loving 4-year-old who's killing it in preschool. He's learning how to express his emotions in a healthy way and is caught up verbally with all of his peers. He's still the only 4-year-old in his class wearing pull-ups, and he doesn't run quite as fast as the other kids on the playground. He struggles with focus and problem solving. We don't know what difficulties lie ahead for Zach as he grows and enters full-time school. But we know, and most importantly, he knows, that we're behind him every step of the way. We are his cheerleaders, his biggest fans. A good friend once told me the motto he has for his son. He said, "I always say, it's not if, but when." This has stuck with me and is something I think about often. I no longer ask myself, will Zach ever be able to fill in the blank? But rather I say, when Zach gets here, on Zach's time, it will be beautiful. I think that's what every child in the foster system needs, someone to believe in their own unique potential. It starts in rooms like this, with people like you, willing to listen to our stories and willing to ask themselves, what can I do? How can I be a voice for these strong, resilient, deserving kids who need an advocate? These kids are more than their circumstances. They're more than a statistic. With support, love, and consistency, anyone can be anything. It starts with someone saying, I believe in you, and someone that they know will always come back.